I have a Guild M120 with me today. It's a 3/4 scale rosewood fingerboard. It has an acoustic electric option, and that's part of the reason why I bought it. I wanted to have something that I could really just like plug and chug when I'm playing, solo acoustic performances. And it has a very warm sound. It's a Fishman pickup, very bright, very loud. Got the mother of pearl inlays over here all the way up to the 24th fret. It's a beautiful guitar. I love having it small, and it's very portable. I'm in the music therapy program at Nazareth College, so it's easy for me to bring around and take it to different clinical sessions. And it's perfect. It has a very, for it being a smaller guitar, it really does have like a very big, warm sounding tone, especially when for finger picking, it's just very mellow. It's not as bright as other guitars. Yeah, so I think this guitar it's not, if you really hear it, and I think if you're not, as long as you're not strumming the hell out of it, and you kind of lay back, it almost plays itself in a way. Whereas some guitars I find like you can play a chord, an open chord, and it'll just like kind of have this like brash sort of like ringy tone to it. It depends on the player, it depends on a lot. But for some reason, just like the way I play, my style lends nicely to this guitar. It's just very adaptable and maneuverable. I love the gloss. It's very nice. The back of the neck is very smooth. It makes me feel almost like it's one solid, although it's not. It has the feeling that it's all one solid piece of wood. Just because I think the color pattern and like the gloss, it's just a nice aesthetic, I think, visually. You don't see too many mahogany guitars that often. So it's special. It has that kind of really cool look to it, natural look. Yeah, so music therapy is the clinical use of music to address cognitive, developmental, social, emotional, even spiritual needs. And it's something, and music is something that we sometimes take for granted. We hear a song, we say, okay, cool, that's it, that's all it was. There's so many elements in terms of timbre, pitch, personal relationship. The actual sensation of hearing that song for someone like you or me is different from somebody who may have autism, somebody who may be schizophrenic. It's just there's so many layers of music that we definitely take for granted, which can be very, very applicable in a clinical setting. So working with somebody and kind of doing like creative songwriting, adapting lyrics to make it personal about them. Changing different elements of the music, the vibrotactical sense. So vibrotactic meaning the feeling of the sound hitting you. You go to a loud concert, and you can be a deaf person walking into a rock and roll show and still have a great time, because if you're sitting by a speaker, you can feel the vibration. You can actually feel the music, which is something that I don't think we really truly understand. And anybody on this planet living can really understand the full capacity of that power. So recently, I had an experience with one of my clients who's in a shared session with another client, and he said, it's great to have you here as a guitarist, and he was specifically talking about guitar, and he was like, I've never really had somebody here who can really teach me the way you do through guitar. And I don't think he was necessarily talking about how to play. I think he was just talking about the functionality of playing and singing and expressing these emotions through song, which was great. It was a super kind of like pat on the back moment for myself, because so often you can feel like what you're doing isn't working, or you don't see it, you don't see the goals necessarily addressed right away. So I think in that moment it's really amazing when people can come to you and tell you, this is how you've helped me, and they can really just like pinpoint what you've done, because it's like, oh wow, it's working. My relationship with it is much more intimate than, say, the piano or the hand drum or anything. Mostly because I think it's just where I really found my calling, per se, my musicianship. Really, just kind of like my own curiosity. Really, at the end of the day, it was just my own curiosity, and how can I sound like this person? How can I develop my own style? And this is the instrument I really kind of figured out how to do that on, I think. my father's guitar that he had in the basement. I never met my father personally, but when he left, there was a lot of things that he left over, like instruments, art, music, and one of the guitars he left was a nylon string. I don't have it with me today, but it was a nylon string, and it was one electric guitar. It was a Vantage electric guitar, and for whatever reason, I was just so mesmerized by playing it, and thinking that I sounded good. And I would practice, and I would practice, and my violin practice would go like this, my guitar practice would go like this, and finally my family was like, all right, we got to get him lessons, we got to get him hooked up with the right people, and I just fell in love. So I guess that's kind of where I first began taking it seriously at the age of 12 or 13. This is a very peculiar guitar. This is a modeled after a Gibson Johnny A, which is a very expensive jazz model of Gibson. Somebody built this for me, actually. So when I was living in Pittsburgh and going into school, there was a guitar maker who was good friends with the father of the band I was playing in at the time, and he made guitars. But it is a very beautiful sounding guitar, a very warm tone. I can get a lot of bluesy tones out of this. Has a very strong, 2 humbuckers give it a lot of power. Everything about it is just really cool. I like the cutaway. It's not your traditional, F-hole. It's like a cool kind of interesting oblong shape here. Same with the other side. It's got a cherry burst finish, so it's kind of like a lighter, lighter red version of like a sunburst. And it's cool is like, I don't know if you can tell in the video, but it has a lot of really cool textures. That you can kind of tell, and has this one little birthmark here. It's this little black mark from the actual wood, so that's kind of like the most like organic part about the guitar. It resonates with me. It has a very good story. Kind of why, reminds me of the days when I first started playing rock and roll music out in Pittsburgh. Off the top of my head, I really can't think of much more that I have that's very sentimental to me. It's just, I guess it's just, that's the way it is. Once you have that feeling with other guitars, you kind of want to replicate that. And I think something that's really special, like a guitar you can't just go out and buy, is really cool. Like this was kind of crafted, and it's really nice. Like that whole feeling is just like very, there's a story behind it. It means something to you. It's irreplaceable, essentially. Yeah, so this is like a very eccentric guitar. When I play it on stage, I have a red Vox coil cable that I plug into just to give it that extra, like, rock and roll feel. I don't know, it's almost like a psychedelic-y type guitar. There's a lot going on. I think I've used this for very different style gigs too. I've used it for jazzier stuff, I used it for rocky stuff, and it never really seems to be out of place because it almost has like a classy look to it. I think just the gold is something that does it. A very retro almost feel to it as well. I don't know, it's like it can work in a rock club and it can work in like a wedding.